It's a large audience, and it's already built. If I can get them to push something that I want to get out and raise awareness about, using that bullhorn is a very effective thing to do. But it is still a go between. It's something that has to be orchestrated. Many times relationships have to be built up and massaged, I guess, over time. But generally, if your message is strong and it has is compelling and it has interest to a large group, it's going to get out in a very broad fashion. The magic of or really the gold nugget of large media would certainly be if the Associated Press ever picks up on it. If the Associated Press picks up on one of your stories, it is going literally global and going to get quite a few impressions, really, literally millions. Social, on the other side, it's very real time. When you're posting, it's getting out there now. It's getting to your audience right in front of them. Many of them on their phone, many of them on the computers, supposedly at work, maybe doing their jobs, uh, but paying attention to what else is going on in the world. So that's real time. It's can be updated by anyone that you want to give control of to your profiles. Um, and I say broader reach for relatively low cost. Broader maybe needs to be, maybe it's maybe I should say broad reach for a relatively low cost, because that's definitely true. Again, when compared to an AP story picking up a press release or a message that you're getting out, that's going to have really just millions and millions, maybe even tens of millions of reach. But unless you've got that big of a social media following on your Facebook page or Twitter account, you're going to be restricted in that regard. But it is low cost. It doesn't cost anything other than the price of the person that's creating the message, generating it, and posting it on your social media. It's also coming from direct from the source. So versus that media go between, you're controlling the message. You get to say what it wants, what you want it to say, and how you want it to be out there. So, which platform to use? I started this by saying there's so many out there. They're constantly evolving and changing over time. With that said, there are a few staples. So I'm going to really just kind of keep this in really literally real time. What's happening now in that landscape, and maybe what we're most going to see in use on fire prevention and education teams. First of all and foremost, and we're going to discuss this a little bit more in the next slide, but is follow the host lead. When you're hired by a host agency, you're going to want to follow their lead on which platforms they use, or which what suggestions they may have to get to their audiences that they want you to reach out to. So follow their lead on that. But in that, consider that audience. Who is the audience that you want to get? And that goes back to that cause-based planning or cause-focused planning. If you're very focused on, if the mission is to be focused on reducing the number of escape debris burns, right? That should tell you immediately, okay, we're honing in on I'm a homeowner or larger landowner type audience, generally a little bit older, or at least of age and income level and demographic to own their own home, and also the maturity to want to keep it clean and pull it into a pile of debris and exercise some responsibility of burning that pile of leaves and making sure that the whole neighborhood doesn't burn down, especially their house. So all of those things to consider in terms of who that audience is, and then based on that, that might guide you which platform to use, and then also how to speak to them. But again, we're going to kind of focus more on really Facebook. Facebook and Twitter tend to be the most popular that either state agencies use, federal agencies use, and I think that's not going to change too much in the future. Twitter has some interesting things going on with it right now, with its purchase from Elon Musk, and some of the interesting things that he's doing with that company and how that's being used. So I hope behind your little dots on the bottom of my screen here, I hope I see some smiling faces in there, because it's crazy. It is just crazy, and we're not sure exactly where that's going to go. But I think from certainly from a incident management team point of view, Twitter I don't is not going away. It is a rapid place to put out quick information that's of emergency nature, and it's very short and sweet, and really also has still, I think, a very large following, especially in the Western United States. It may not be as much in your neck of the wood. I know here in Tennessee, our Twitter following has kind of gone down a little bit, but that's going to vary by geographic location. And again, so that goes back to considering the audience. Where are they? That said, a great number of people, though some may challenge this, are still on Facebook. Yes, it tends to have a little bit older demographic, but if I showed you my department's agency Facebook page and looking at their demographics, our core age group is between 25 and 55. So that is a very highly influential block of people that I want to reach. So I'm not going to get rid of Facebook. There are many, many people still out there, and it is still a staple for social media. Facebook obviously allows you the opportunity for longer posts and replies. Both of these really are microblogs in some fashion or another, right? So you're able to put in as much information as you want on Facebook, pictures, video, that kind of stuff, and have a conversation. And hopefully the goal is to really get some sort of engagement with an audience, to have either a discussion or just to get a read on what their feedback is. Twitter, on the other hand, really, it's short and sweet. It's very short messages. They need to be concise. They need to be clear. A little bit more difficult because of that. You might take a Facebook post that has 3 paragraphs of information, which gets a little long, but truncating that down into 240 characters is a challenge. So you got to be a little bit strategic about that. But again, I think for the most part, for the rest of this presentation, we'll really kind of focus on Facebook and using Facebook and some guidelines around posting there as our central platform. And Brooke, if you could help me with the chats, that's one thing I don't see. So if there is a chat of a question that seems immediate, please go ahead and let me know, and we'll try to address that.
Copy.
So I mentioned a minute ago about accounts and which accounts to use. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to think from my experience, not really so much with fire prevention education teams, but incident management teams, vast majority, it seems to me, over the last couple of years are highly reliant on the agency platform. An incident management team gets called up, stick in fire prevention education team in this case, and that agency is probably going to want you to use their social media accounts rather than creating your own team account. There's some pros and cons associated with both of those. And again, this is really sort of modified from the incident management team side of things, but I think I've adjusted it enough to really sort of show the differences between, how, or maybe a couple of cases where your team might want to get involved with its own account. But typically, again, the pro of an agency account, so you roll in, Tennessee Department of Agriculture, Division of Forestry has hired a fire prevention and education team to come in and let's just say, for example, to address escape debris fires. I am going, as the agency liaison, PIO liaison, I'm going to want you to use our accounts. It's established. I've got a core group of followers that are already reliant on us as an agency for information. I want to maintain that. I want to beef it up, right? It helps me keep my profiles current. And in that regard, it helps boost the numbers. So I might increase the audience, or I at least keep my audience engaged and active in the current issue at hand. The con of that is, again, because I'm a Department of Agriculture, I deal with this on a regular basis in my home agency. We are one of 3 divisions in our department, and each division is not allowed to have a Facebook account. We do have some campaign accounts out there, but in general, our department, our reputation is all on @TN Agriculture. Because of that, I am one of several social media handlers, and I'm posting on forestry related issues, many times wildfire prevention related. But I've got folks that are putting social media out there about more traditional farming practices, cows, sheep, horses, hemp, who knows what other kind of, uh, topics are out there. So we're competing against those. And the people that I might want to get to reach that prevention message have to weed through that content to see it. So that's a con. Um, and because of that, also, I'm limited in terms of the frequency we can post. There are algorithms in Twitter and in more so really in Facebook. You know, if you hammer the site with 10 or 12 posts a day, you're going to start getting truncated. It's like a governor on a throttle switch that's going to dial you back in terms of your algorithm, because it just looks like you're spamming your audience. So trying to keep, 4 to 6 or so posts a day total is kind of that magical mark. But if I'm competing with other divisions or other content, I just got to fit that in that equation. The other con is any mistake that I may make as a fire prevention team member that's doing social for this agency. If I make a mistake, it reflects negatively on that host. So that's another con. Some of the
Hey, Ken,
pros about, oh, go ahead.
we had a question in the chat. How do you handle agency reluctance to give access?
So good question. And again, that's going to be up to that agency. They might not even want you to do social. If they're so reluctant where, they bring you in, to tackle an issue and don't want you to use their social, then that's going to take a rub right there. I would push back. I would say, well, social is come armed with some good defense to say we need to promote some messages on social to reach a broader audience. Is there a way that we can work this out? And maybe it's just you creating the posts on a Word document and providing them the content, and they go ahead and do it themselves. That kind of goes, in my mind, it goes against the grain. Again, if you were coming to my agency, that would take my time. I'm hiring you as a team member and team all together to come in and help alleviate the time so I can concentrate on other things. So I would have a delicate conversation about that, present to them the pros of you being able to handle that. And maybe it's even showing them some history of your posts in the past and how you will be willing and certainly understanding to follow any policies that they may have. Another person raised their hand there. I see. I don't know who it is.
Go ahead, Gwen.
Hey guys. Yeah, I know with FPETs we have a lot less control than when we're on IMTs. PIOs on IMTs really do get to kind of run with their posts themselves, and it's sort of set up lots of times that you've got there on your chart where you have a team site. But I think there's also the understanding with an IMT, the local agency public affairs folks understand that that's a priority for them, and so they stay on it even if they want to be the ones who give posts. I think the other thing we've struggled with FPETs is that the agency host doesn't know going into the agreement to bring you on that we're going to be doing that kind of stuff and that we're going to need their assistance. So more and more, we're trying to get the word out to hosts that, hey, you're probably going to actually have to give your PAO overtime and have them, if they're going to be the ones who are going to be posting everything, this is going to be part of the package deal here. Otherwise, the stuff does not get posted. We've run into that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And it would be unfortunate not to be able to use this tool because it is such a powerful tool.
So my point is that I think pre-work with the host is really the way to try to handle it if we can. And like you said, show them some examples, but really just establishing that we're going to need their time commitment.
Yeah, yeah. And that's certainly something that a team member would want to work with the team lead, because that lead's going to be that liaison with the host agency to make that case. So I saw somebody point out too about having a strong social media plan. Really a part of that. Really, that's a part of a broader communications plan. So, getting that stood up or having an example ready, and once you land on site to be able to present that, I think could help alleviate some of that issue. I know in some of the incident management teams I've been on recently, it's all over the board. Some PAOs are like, here's the keys to the kingdom, just go ahead and do whatever you want, which is crazy to me. I certainly would have a few more parameters from my agency, but I've also been on other teams where the local PAO is so um, dedicated to their audience and feels very passionate about how they've managed that audience over the years to build it, that they're very reluctant on some of that, and literally to the point where every single post is proofed and edited before it's actually sent out. And that may be what it comes to. Honor the team, honor the host. It may be a thorn in the process, a little bit of a headache, but ultimately they're paying the bill. You work for them, so honor how they want to get it done. Better to have that tool than not. The pros of the team side of things, really, again, you have greater access, right? You're going to be building a very team specific or cause specific audience based around that. There is no really administrative ease, though. If you're one PIO of a team and another, sorry, not PIO, social media person on the team, and another comes in, there's a little bit of there could create some conflict there, but ultimately, again, that administrative ease is a lot easier. Mistakes in this case reflect the team, not so much the host agency. So that's really more of a pro than a con, at least as it regards the host agency. Then you also have those administrative records, and they're a little bit easier to keep in your doc box for your team as a whole. Strong negative to this, obviously, is having to build followers. If you're on a team that gets called out for a 2-week assignment, it would not make any sense to me to go out and build a team-based profile or a cause-based profile. You're just not going to build the followers in time unless you have a huge budget to promote or boost posts, which often is not the case. So you're really not going to have that advantage in very many followers, which kind of defeats the point. Also, just pointing out here in terms of time, you're going to, when you close it out, you're going to have to redirect them somewhere else. It's a very time limited function. So, it has an opening, it has a closing. Maybe you're there 3 months. Maybe it makes sense if you're setting up shop to be there as a team, and it's going to rotate over a period of several months to set something up. But eventually it's going to close. So good conversation. All right. The ultimate strategy that we're trying to achieve here with social media is, again, I'm going to use this cause-focused term because I really like it. Distribute cause-focused information by the existing host unit and or team-specific social media accounts with a call to action. This is really one of my personal preferences. There might be others on this call that don't see that, but I always try to provide a call to action in most posts that I put out there. Yes, we're trying to raise awareness, which means we're getting information out. But ultimately, we want people to act on that information. So providing a call to action at the end of any message keeps that going, and we'll discuss that a little bit more as we cruise through this. Some best practices, and there's several on here, and I hope I don't lay on this slide for too long. Got to be cognizant of time, but research a host agency's profile. This is, again, assuming you're going to use the host agency's profiles or accounts to do that. Get a sense of their tone. What kind of tone are they trying to convey in their socials? Are they very direct? Are they kind of funny? Are they a little bit controversial? Who knows what that might be, but get a sense of their tone. And also based on that, how is their audience responding to that tone? Do they have an active following? Are there people on there that are constantly replying or commenting on their posts? Take some time to go in, assuming you have the keys to their social media accounts. It's real easy to go into their demographics look at who is on their site in terms of men and women, their age group, their distribution, even what devices they're using. Are they mostly on their handhelds? Are they on their computers? What type of content resonates with them? All of this is in the insights of Facebook and even Twitter and many other social media profile or accounts. Do they respond better to images? Do they respond better to video? Do they respond just to text? What sort of content resonates with their audience? Get a sense for that. Go back and look through the history of their previous posts, for X number of months and see what's really resonating. So that's the best thing to do, number one. And even if they don't give you the keys to their account, you can always go onto their social media profiles and look through that as well. You may not see all the statistics, but you'll at least get a sense of what kind of stuff they're posting. Next one, I'm gonna do this typewriter style. Go left to right and then down. Use hashtags to tag the cause or the topic. This is one of those things that 5 years ago I said it's a must do. Always use hashtags. Put as many different hashtags in there that relate to your post as possible. Bury them at the bottom of a Facebook post because it's going to affect the algorithm to where it's going to get at least more push, but also if somebody's searching for information, it's going to be easier to find. That has sort of changed a little bit, at least in the Facebook world, where basically any word in the post is a keyword. So it's a little bit less of a must do now, though I still have a practice of doing it just because I am organized that way. And I prefer to sort of categorize things. Example here, debris burning, or it could be escape debris burning. It could be gutters. It could be defensible space, what have you. Wildfire prevention, Smokey Bear, any of those things. It just helps me categorize what this particular topic was. And even more beneficial to me as a social media manager is I can go back and it's much easier to search for those posts that I've done on that particular topic in the past, when I'm about to post on something new. So did I use a certain image back then? I want to make sure I don't use the same image. Do I want to phrase something a little bit differently, or how did I phrase it? Maybe it worked really well. I want to use it again. Not just the way I've done it, but also in terms of other people who have used that particular hashtag in the past. Most of our content that we're going to be promoting, much of it anyway, and especially if we're paid or if it is paid for on a public dime, it is public domain. So feel free to use. If you guys stumble on something that I ever posted, copy it and paste it if you like it. It's free. Related to that, use mentions to tag organizations. This is something that really helps you grow that network. Again, and it also shows the network. It shows trust by our audience that, okay, it's not just you saying that, but this particular outfit that I'm familiar with, maybe it's a local fire department, Smokey Bear, obviously, some other organizations, call them out because it shows that you're part of a greater network of people that have a shared interest in this topic. It also helps you grow that reach because you mention them, they're going to get pinged. Their social media people are going to get pinged that outfit was mentioned, and maybe they'll want to share it as a result. So the pyramid effect starts to grow, and you get a broader reach with your post. So tags and mentions are key to your social media posts. I always like to include a link to a website or another campaign's website or a related website. This is part of that call to action. A link saying go here for more information is an example of a call to action. It doesn't have to be anything more major than that, but I try to entice the audience based on a post, the message in a post. But ultimately, if they have the desire to go and read more about it, I'd like to give them a pathway to do that. And I don't just say, Google this or Google that. I find the link and I post it in there because I don't want them to have to do something other than click that link to get to the next spot. So try to give them opportunity to go on to the next thing. Another way to grow that network of folks and show that you're part of a bigger network is to often just, content can be as easy as sharing or retweeting a post from a partner organization. If some local fire department that your host agency actively works with posts about, make sure your gutters are clean, you don't have to create your own post. Just take their post, share it, and then maybe add a sentence on top of it, to show some original content related to it. So help them out. They might help you out with mentions. Help them out with sharing and retweeting as well. It seems common sense, but I always try to have a friendly tone. Friendly, and I probably should add professional tone, I think is key to this. I'm gonna add here too, because I don't see another thing on here, but this is a good place to put it. But grammar is kind of a big deal. It is, at least for me. I try and I mess it up all the time. But if you have the ability to go back and check through Grammarly or some other fun tool to check and make sure your grammar is correct, that's a part of that professionalism. We want to look and show that we have strong possession of the English language and are able to put that out in a professional tone and manner. So having that, I think, is just as important of having a friendly tone. Be sensitive about timing and content. This one can be tricky. Case in point is, in Nashville here a few weeks ago, we had a really major incident that gained national attention. It was very sad and alarming to many of us here in the local communities. I'm, of course, referring to the Covenant school shooting. But immediately after that happened, our social media coordinator for the department sent out a text and said, "Hey, everybody managing socials, let's cool off on social for the rest of the day because we're so close to the event. Anything that we produce, obviously it's going to be unrelated to that, but anything that we produce could show insensitivity to the fact that a major event just happened locally. So be cognizant of what's going on in the surroundings that aren't related to your cause-focused mission of your fire prevention and education team, but just be sensitive to what's going around in the community around you as you post content. Certainly, you always want to monitor and respond. We're going to get into that deep here in another couple slides, but that's a big part of your job, is to not just post, but also monitor what's going on and responding to comments. Being raw is okay. It kind of goes with that friendly tone. You obviously want to be friendly, but being raw, we want to be transparent. Don't hold back. This key point for incidents is, and not so much for fire prevention education, but for incidents, you want to get the truth out there. You want to say, "Hey, fire's blowing up. You all need to get your bags and maybe need to evacuate." Don't try to sugarcoat things. That's what it means on the incident side. From a fire prevention side, again, here's what the consequences might be if you don't do such a thing, such as keep your gutters clean or maintain effective defensible space. So being raw, being truthful, it's sort of an art to doing this, but keeping it raw, keeping it real is going to be a whole lot more effective than if you try to bury it or pad it somehow. Mix it up. Try to mix up what you're posting out there. Don't just post pictures. Try to mix it up with video. Try to post it, maybe even some audio snippets, some interviews, effective pictures, and whatnot. So try to mix up the content, and also certainly be accessible to people with disabilities. Socials like Facebook has some pretty good. Like if you're posting a video, you want to make sure it's captioned. You want to make sure it's captioned correctly. Always edit that. And many of these social media tools, unlike 5 years ago, now have built-in mechanisms to make that happen fairly easily, and they're fairly accurate too. And here's just an example of the use of hashtags. I just did this last night or 2 nights ago when I was putting this together. And these are 2 terms I pulled up and instantly got several hits. These are from all over the country, from all walks of life in terms of the fire prevention communities. We've got federal agencies, we've got local agencies, fire departments, state agencies, and others. I think there's some folks here from Texas in the room. So kudos to you on your all's, you all have your own wildfire education and prevention social handle. So I'm jealous. You guys got your own thing. So that's pretty cool. But you can see a lot of content already exists out there for gutters and how cleaning your gutters is a major component of defensible space. So again, not to recreate the wheel on everything, you can always go and see how some of these have performed. If you're thinking about doing a post on gutters and defensible space and wildfire prevention, there might be some content out there that you can readily adapt or just take outright and put up there. All right, some guidelines. In general, and again, this really comes a lot from the incident side, but in general, a lot of what you're going to post should already be publicly available in another media. Maybe that's a website, maybe it's a publication, but it's really easy, quite honestly, from a content manager to go out there and take something from your host agency's website or a publication that they have and just pull that information, maybe modify it a little bit to meet the tone or the nature of the mission. But most of that information is already going to be publicly available somewhere else. And you can always, again, link back to that source, if it's a website at least, on your post. So it makes it a whole lot easier to generate content that's already created. You don't have to recreate the wheel on all of this stuff. In fact, there's already a lot of really good content out there. And I think some of the, we heard some of the presentations this morning from states, as well as I think this afternoon's presentations are going to deal and dive into more content that's available. Team-specific accounts should only be established if the fire prevention education team can dedicate, I say PIO here, but it could be a social media team member with skills in that realm to provide frequent content. This again goes to the team-specific accounts. I suppose you could look at it and take the example of Texas. If you're a state agency looking to create a prevention and education dedicated account, this is again another consideration for that. Maybe not so much a team, but if you're in that realm for a state agency or maybe a federal agency, considering that if you're going to create it, you got to feed it. Social media is one of those beasts you just got to feed all the time. Otherwise, you're not going to get much traffic. And then, of course, if you do that as a team, you'll definitely want to use the Fire Prevention Education Team logo. I've got an example of that in the bottom left corner on all these slides. I think that's the most up-to-date one. I could be wrong. Somebody correct me on that if it's not. But use that logo instead of the agency logo. Some more guidelines. Again, the dedicated social media member can generally post content from and this is again part of that conversation with the host agency at the very beginning. What content do we really want to focus on? What messages do we want to get out? The host hopefully will be able to tell you, hey, again, if it's escape debris fires, just for an example, we've got a lot of content over here on this webpage about that. We've got multiple publications produced. Here's a lot of content that we'd like you to push out. They're going to give you that. If it comes to the point where you're creating original content, again, feel it out, but you definitely want to work with your team lead, and you may even have to have that host agency public affairs officer start to approve content since it's original. Again, you don't want to mix up or overstep your bounds or step against messaging that they've already sent out. So just making sure that you're in the same wheelhouse as they are with regards to keeping that message consistent with things they've already posted. Obviously, avoid contentious issues or information that's related to agency policy or something. Obviously, it's not considered for public information. This seems obvious, but different. You're going to be coming from a different walk of life potentially, where your agency, your home agency, operates versus how your host agency operates. So be cognizant of that. Always assume that any content that you post is going to be public. A radio station, a TV station could take your post and use it as a news item. In fact, we utilize, and this is part of the Twitter side of things again, a lot of our public information that we put out regarding either wildfires or prevention messages that we send out on Twitter especially, but also on Facebook, end up getting treated like a press release. In fact, they've in some regards have replaced the press release. Well, they were literally pull that tweet out or pull that Facebook post out, sometimes screenshot it and put it on the nightly news, and that's their story. So whatever you post, just know it could be published on a greater scale, which is a good thing for the most part. Try to keep things into what to do for the most part, but here's a few not to do. And these are really, Captain Obvious, but don't engage in abusive language, attacks, or offensive terms targeting individuals or groups. I think Jim was going to give a talk about social considerations. This is really where that kind of fits in. Again, kind of know what some vernacular is in an area of a neck of the woods that you're not familiar with, and recognize the sensitivity to certain things around that. Learn about those before you post on that. Don't endorse commercial products, services, or entities. Again, kind of obvious, but again, generally we're going to be representing state or national government agencies. So that goes against policies to do such things. We don't want to endorse one company over another. It shows favoritisms and cronyism. So we don't want to give or mislead our audiences that we're doing that.